A second method of my research I used was www.gov.scot website. I chose this to find information specific to Scotland because it would contain unbiased and highly factual information. One advantage of this method was that it has reliable and non-biased information as the government has standards to uphold and won't lie. The information is written by professionals, fact-checked and verified by the government before uploaded. For example, the website had numbers and statistics on reoffending rates in Scotland which related to my investigation. One advantage of this method is that the information from this website was up to date and relevant as the data was updated in 2023, meaning it's relevant information, in date, and reliable. One disadvantage of this method is that the website only had detailed information on Scotland and not any detail in comparing Scotland to any of the countries, which is the aim of my investigation. For example, if there was a comparison between Norway and Scotland's reoffending rates, as that was one of the main focuses of my investigation. Another disadvantage of this method is that the website had a lot of irrelevant information that doesn't relate to my investigation, meaning it was difficult to sift through the information to find facts relative to the aims of my investigation. For example, it told me information about the leading cause of crime in Norway, which was not part of my investigation. If I was to do this again, I would find a website that was more specialized in comparing Scotland to Scandinavian countries, therefore I wouldn't be overwhelmed with irrelevant information and have to hunt to find the information I was looking for. Research findings. One fact I found out from my survey from Source One is I learned that 70% of the people who answered it thought that prisons in Scandinavia were more effective than Scottish prisons. This means that a large minority of the public thought Scottish prisons were more effective. One fact I found from Source 2 is that Norway, a country in Scandinavia, has one of the lowest recidivism rates in the entire world at about 20%, meaning that Norway must do something better in their prison system to result in one of the lowest reoffending rates in the world. One fact I found out from Source 3 is that prisons in Scandinavian prisons do not carry weapons and officers are not just for security but also rehabilitation. Each inmate has a contact officer who helps them take the next steps to get out of prison. Also, prisons in Norway do not have a life sentence or death penalty. The max sentence in Norway is 21 years. One fact I found out from Source 4 is that prisons in Norway spend around £98,000 a year to keep one prisoner in prison. This is significantly higher than Scotland, which spends around £44,620 to keep a prisoner in prison for 1 year. One fact I found out from Source 5 is that Scandinavia has an incarceration rate of 75 per 100,000, which is better than Scotland, which has an incarceration rate of 131.9 prisoners per 100,000. One fact I found out from Source 6 is that Norway has 57 prisons with a total of 3,600 cells. The average Norwegian prison only has 70 cells. Conclusion. My hypothesis was that I believe that Scandinavian prisons are better than Scottish prisons. I have concluded that this is correct because I found out that in Scandinavia, they have an incarceration rate of 75,000 per person, whereas Scotland has 131.9 prisoners per 100,000. My strongest argument for this is that Norway has one of the lowest recidivism rate in the world at about 20%. My first aim was to find out what the public think if Scandinavian prisons are better than Scottish prisons. I have concluded that 70% of the public think that Scandinavian prisons are more effective than Scottish prisons. This is because they believe that Scandinavian prisons are more focused on the rehabilitation of prisoners. My second aim was to find out what makes Scandinavian prisons better. I have concluded that what makes Scandinavian prisons better is that they are more focused on rehabilitation. For example, officers aren't just for security, but also to help prisoners take the next steps to get out of prison. My third aim was to find out the recidivism rate in Scandinavia compared to Scotland. I have concluded that the recidivism rate is worse in Scotland compared to Scandinavia, with a 5% difference between them, with Scotland sitting at 24.1% recidivism rate and Scandinavia at 19% to 20%. My final aim was to find out how much Scandinavia spends on prisons compared to Scotland. I have concluded that Norway spends significantly more money on their prisons compared to Scotland. This is because Norway spends £98,000, which is more than double than what Scotland spends, which is £44,620. I recommend the government should change prisons to be more focused on rehabilitation and reducing the reoffending rates by introducing things to help prisoners get out of prison and stop the cycle of reoffending. For example, they could introduce the same as Norway that officers should double as security and a personal helper to help them get out of prison. This is because the evidence showed me that the major reason is that reoffending rates are high in Scotland.